the Oklahoma newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here in studio with Scott Wright, OSU beat writer. Scott, Wednesday is signing day. I'm not calling it the early signing day anymore. This is signing day. Yeah. It's the day that most players will commit and sign their national letters of intent. Oklahoma State right now trying to get a guy already on campus to commit to help their running back situation in Chuba Hubbard. But other than Chuba, where do things stand right now with the running back situation?
It's a really interesting situation. It's a really dynamic situation because it's constantly changing. You don't know exactly where things stand with Chuba Hubbard. Obviously, the team probably knows more than we do publicly. They haven't spoken about anything yet, but that's the biggest recruiting job that they have right now, is trying to convince him to stay if he wants to. So, if he stays, there's a little less pressure on them to find somebody immediately to help build that depth. Without him, they probably need to find two running backs. They don't have anybody in this class right now, and so it's kind of a moving target right now, trying to figure out exactly what they need to do. They got to keep their options open with a lot of different guys, and the clock is ticking on Wednesday getting here.
Well, you talk about depth, and right now they really only have one guy that they've used, except for Chuba Hubbard and LD Brown, and that's still some pretty thin depth, and they're in on some guys that would not only be depth, but would be some serious talent. The top of my list, Scott, is Daniel Nagata from out in California.
Yeah, absolutely, and he is their primary focus of their recruiting efforts right now, regardless of what happens with Chuba Hubbard, because he's a guy that you can get in and be in the program for a while and be an impact player. He's ready to go. He's a ready-made running back, a guy who can do a little bit of everything and do it well. At 5'9", about 190 pounds, and can very elusive. Can get out and catch the ball, do a lot of different things. Rated, recruiting services split certain running backs into one group and all-purpose backs into another, but depending on which service you look at, he's either number 2 or number 6 all-purpose back in the country in terms of what he can do and what they see there. So big-time recruit, would be a big landing spot for him if they can get him to Oklahoma State. The trick with that is he's not planning to announce his decision until January 2nd at the Under Armour All-American game. There had been some talk previously he was going to announce December 21st at a different All-American game, but he was going to go ahead and sign in the early signing period. And he hasn't actually addressed that now since he's changed the announcement date. So there's still a chance that he could be signing on Wednesday and just asking the team that he signs with not to announce what's going on. So that'll be an interesting thing. The whole dynamic of that changes with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, and I guess once he's signed, the school doesn't really care.
Exactly.
I mean, they would probably honor his wishes. But an interesting side note to Nagata, and really more Cowboys than just him. He's obviously not a commitment just yet. But the Western flavor of this class and some others, they're getting some guys from out west. Scott, what's going on here?
It's really been interesting because there's been a lot of different coaches involved in doing this. Josh Henson went out to New Mexico to find an offensive lineman, and then there was another guy in Arizona that he had targeted that Charlie Dickey came in and Cade Bennett in this class, who he stepped in and the Bennett relationship with Charlie Dickey was really the swaying factor for him, for a guy that really had planned on staying close to home and being from Scottsdale. Then they go and get Matt Polk, a big-time receiver, 6'4", 210, out of Scottsdale as well, and that's a Casey Dunn job right there that he goes out and finds that guy. And then obviously Shane Illingworth, the quarterback from Norco, California, was a guy that has some Oklahoma roots and been a big fan of Oklahoma State football and the way they throw the ball around. Once Mike Yursich started recruiting him, he got really interested in that and has stuck to it, and now is expected to sign and be on campus in January.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of guys from west of the Rockies really coming to Stillwater, but it's happening in this class. And even though Wednesday's the day, Scott, and OSU has trended towards having more guys sign in this December class. In fact, the last couple of years, as we've seen the early signing time come into play, they've almost had their whole class filled. Right now, I believe it's 17, unless it moved over the weekend, but still they're under the number that they would be looking for. So does that say that February signing day is going to be a bigger deal for them than in the past?
Yeah, it absolutely looks that way right now because they still want to get 25 guys in. However, they had a really small senior class. They've had 6 guys leave so far via the transfer portal. That still doesn't get you up to 25 openings. They had a couple extra on top of that because they were under the 85 total limit that you're allowed. So they've got some room to work with, but it's a moving target again right now because after the bowl game, if guys decide to leave, then you've got another spot that opens up and it changes the whole thing. So it definitely looks like January and going into that February signing date is going to be a lot more busy than it has been the last 2 years since they've opened that December signing window. Because Oklahoma State's only had to sign 2 guys each of the past 2 Februarys. So it's a very different aspect for them in terms of what they're looking at. Still going to add to this class, I think, at least a couple of guys before Wednesday, but the rest of that 25-man class is going to be added in February.
All right, well, we'll continue to follow this December signing period, have tons of coverage leading up to Wednesday, and then obviously after we get all the names signed, sealed, and delivered, we'll obviously have coverage of that, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at oklahoman.com and every day in the Oklahoman.